Chief of Staff for President Bush 43. Andy, always good to see you. And I know that, Republicans are chomping at the bit, enjoying the president's very, very low approval numbers. You're a great student of history, and you can remember Ronald Reagan at this stage in his presidency. It was spelled out in a very good column in today's Wall Street Journal that he similarly was looking unelectable, and that the Republicans were probably going to lose seats in the fall election with inflation still a problem, unemployment rising. They only lost about 26 seats that year, which was a surprise, but he did come back. Are there lessons, you think, for Joe Biden from that experience?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. It's great to be with you. The stage tonight is not just about the State of the Union, it's about the state of the world. And the whole world will be watching how our democracy is discussing what's happening in the world. So I hope that everybody in Congress, the House and the Senate, and the cabinet members that are there, and the Supreme Court justices are there, actually be well behaved and polish our democracy so the world sees the value of having a democracy. I suspect the biggest applause line tonight may be President Zelensky, and when he's mentioned, and he's not going to be there, but obviously everybody is paying attention to what is happening in Ukraine. Yes, there are lots of problems in America, but they are opportunities, and I happen to believe our democracy can deal with these challenges in such a way that we'll be able to mitigate the problems. Look, President Biden is not popular today. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't stand with them so that the world sees us standing together, and I will be standing with the president in terms of his foreign policy initiatives. He's done a great job of unifying NATO and emboldening other countries that want to be in NATO. And I think he's built a good, I'm going to say, coalition of partners that are working on sanctions. Clearly, what President Putin is doing is terrible and not acceptable to the real world. And he's not really a president. He's an autocrat. And he is not reflecting even the will of the Russian people. So that's how I view tonight's address. Yes, we have problems with inflation. We have problems with our supply chain. We have challenges with our democracy and how it works. But I hope tonight we get to demonstrate in America what the whole world respects about America, in that our democracy is the shining example, the great example at the top of the hill that other people want to follow. And that's what I hope will happen. There's lots of opportunity for applause and boos. I hope there'll be more applause tonight, because I want to show the world, I want the world to see what a good democracy does and how it does its business.
Well, you're right. You're right. That's a big test tonight. But, obviously Vladimir Putin, what he's doing will be a focus tonight as well. And I was wondering, thinking you were coming, Andy, what is it about Vladimir Putin that has bedeviled presidents? I'm thinking all the way back to your old boss, President Bush. This is from June in 2001, when the president made a reference about a new relationship that could be scored with Russia. This is from President Bush. Take a look.
I looked the man in the eye. I found it to be very straightforward and trustworthy. We had a very good dialogue. I was able to get a sense of his soul.
Now here we are. Spent forward. 20 years later, does this guy have a soul? Does Vladimir Putin have a soul? Has he confused presidents of both parties over the year to the point that we can't figure him out, and now he's unleashed terror on the world? What do you think?
Well, he's an enigma. He's a KGB agent. I looked into his eyes and I saw a KGB agent. But President Bush, in all defense, he read a biography about Putin before we went to Slovenia, where he met with President Putin. And one of the first things he said to President Putin when the president and President Putin sat together, and I was there with Condi Rice and translators and our counterparts. And yes, President Putin had a stack of cards he wanted to go through, and President Bush put his hands on top of the stack of cards and said, before you go through your cards, and you can go through every single one of them, I will be fully attentive to what you have to say. I want to ask you a question. What was it like when you went to the dacha that you loved to be in with your mother, and it had burned to the ground, and you were going through the ashes and you saw something glistening. And President Putin was taken aback by that, and he says, that was an amazing experience. I was going through the statue and there was ashes, and I went through it and I saw this glistening in gold, and I picked it up, and it was the cross my mother gave me. And President Putin was in awe that the president knew about that, and President Bush said, that's the power of faith. So that was the context of the president's remarks about, I looked into his eyes and I saw his soul.
Right.
Look at, I was with President Bush when he saw President Putin many other times, and I guarantee he saw him as somewhat of a selfish autocrat, a little bit Napoleonic, insecure in his own skin, and overcompensates with being a bully. So look, we don't trust Putin. Putin has violated so many international laws with what he's doing right now, and it's terrible. But we've got to be the shining example of what governments can do and how they should do their business by polishing our democracy.
All right, Andy Card, we'll see what tips the president gets from you as he addresses the nation tonight in his first State of the Union address. Andy Card.